Right now, somewhere near you, someone is lighting a cigarette. They know it will shorten their life. They light it anyway. But the real answer for why is far stranger than addiction alone. It reaches back 12,000 years into a desert, long before tobacco was a habit at all. Your ancestors did not start smoking for pleasure. They started for something closer to survival. In 2021, archaeologist Darren Duke and his team uncovered charred wild tobacco seeds at a hearth site in Utah's Great Salt Lake Desert. The seeds were burned. The hearth was ringed with duck bones. Someone, roughly 12,000 years ago, sat by a fire and inhaled tobacco smoke on purpose. That single hearth pushed back the known history of tobacco use by thousands of years. It also raised a question nobody could answer with certainty. Why would anyone choose to breathe smoke from a plant that, in large enough doses, can kill you? The plant itself is a chemist's nightmare disguised as a leaf. Tobacco produces nicotine as a defense mechanism, a neurotoxin potent enough to paralyze insects that try to eat it. In humans, that same molecule crosses the blood-brain barrier in about 10 seconds. It binds to receptors that normally respond to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter your body already uses to manage attention, movement, and mood. Nicotine hijacks that system. It floods it. And in doing so, it triggers a release of dopamine in a part of your brain called the nucleus accumbens, the same region that lights up when you eat, when you win, when you fall in love. That is not an accident of modern biology. That reward circuit is ancient. It evolved to make you repeat behaviors that once kept you alive. Eating rewarded you because food meant survival. Nicotine simply found a way to trick that same wiring. But reward alone does not explain why tobacco became sacred to so many cultures long before it became a habit. Anthropologist Johannes Wilbert spent decades studying tobacco use among indigenous peoples of South America and documented something striking. In dozens of these societies, tobacco was not a recreational plant. It was a tool for altering consciousness in a controlled, ritual way. Shamans smoked concentrated tobacco to induce trance states, to communicate with spirits, to heal the sick. The visions were real to them, and the tool that produced them was tobacco, not casual smoke breaks. Think about what that means. The earliest smokers were not looking for a mild buzz between tasks. They were looking for a door. A way to step outside ordinary awareness and access something they believed was hidden just beyond it. Why would your brain be so susceptible to that kind of door in the first place? Here is the strange part. Your brain did not evolve in a world full of pure nicotine. It evolved in a world where mild plant toxins were common, and where a heightened, altered state of alertness sometimes meant the difference between noticing a predator and missing it. Some researchers argue that early humans were drawn to psychoactive plants precisely because altered awareness had survival value. A shift in perception could reveal a pattern in the landscape, a threat in the brush, a memory suddenly made vivid. Tobacco, taken in strong ritual doses, produces exactly that kind of jolt. So the first smokers were not chasing addiction. They were chasing insight in the only chemical language their environment offered. Then something shifted. Tobacco stopped being rare and sacred and started being common. By the time Europeans reached the Americas in the 15th century, tobacco use had already spread from ritual context into everyday life across many indigenous societies, used for hospitality, for negotiation, for casual social bonding as much as ceremony. When explorers carried tobacco back to Europe, they carried only the plant. They left behind the entire cultural framework that had once contained it, the rules about when to use it, how much, and why. What remained in Europe was just the chemistry. And chemistry alone is a much less careful teacher than ritual. Within a century, tobacco use exploded across Europe, Africa, and Asia, driven by trade routes and colonial economies. Pipes appeared in London taverns. Snuff became a mark of high society. Cigarettes, once industrial rolling technology made them cheap and fast to produce, turned tobacco from an occasional ritual into a daily habit measured in packs instead of ceremonies. Nora Fokow, director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, has spent much of her career studying exactly what happens in a brain that receives nicotine dozens of times a day instead of occasionally in ritual. Her research shows that repeated nicotine exposure does not just trigger dopamine release. It rewires the receptors themselves, increasing their number and sensitivity, so the brain begins to expect the chemical and function differently without it. What started as an occasional door to altered awareness becomes, with enough repetition, a locked room you feel you cannot leave. That is the real shift between your ancestors and the smoker lighting a cigarette outside your window right now. The chemistry is identical. The context is not. One version of tobacco use was rare, ritualized, and bounded by meaning. The other is frequent, industrial, and driven almost entirely by a brain trying to avoid the discomfort of receptors it built for a dose that never used to come this often. Does that mean modern smokers are just victims of biology? Not quite. It means they inherited a reward system built for scarcity and dropped it into a world of abundance. Your dopamine circuitry cannot tell the difference between a shaman's rare ceremonial smoke and a habit fed 60 times a day. It only knows that the signal came and that it wants the signal again. There is something almost tragic in that gap. The earliest smokers reached for tobacco to touch something larger than themselves, a vision, a connection, a moment outside ordinary time. Somewhere along the way, industrial production and daily repetition stripped the ritual away and left only the craving behind. The meaning left. The mechanism stayed. Public health researchers now describe modern smoking almost entirely in terms of addiction and disease risk, and that framing is accurate and important. Cardiovascular damage, lung cancer, and dependence are well documented and deadly serious. But it is worth remembering that the behavior did not start as a health crisis. It started as an attempt to reach something meaningful, using the only tool available. So the next time you see someone light a cigarette, you are watching the faint echo of a ritual that once required silence, ceremony, and belief. The chemistry your ancestors discovered by a fire in the desert 12,000 years ago is the same chemistry lighting that flame today. What changed is not the plant. What changed is everything around it, the meaning stripped away, the frequency multiplied, the sacred turned habitual. Somewhere near you, someone is still lighting a fire and breathing in smoke, chasing a feeling their ancestors chased first. They just don't remember why.